I am your host, Saleem bin Muhammad Rafi, and here is my YouTube channel, Zamir Universal. Lack of interest and lack of credibility is that people who fight and with animosity cross all limits, all red lines. They go into their depths of hatred and despise for another human being to whom they think is someone not from the human race but worse than an animal. It's these people who, no matter at what place they are, who they are, what religion is, which country they belong to, are always the loser. Take, for example, the United States of America, and just look at the United States of America 50 years ago. After the Second World War, when they dropped nuclear bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they were the most hated human beings on earth, and the kind of crimes they committed against the natives, how they killed them, how they took away their children and asked them to put skirts, change them, how they raped their women and produced illegitimate child, how they made them work by putting chains in their legs and hurt their ankles, how they killed them, how mercilessly they killed bison, the only food they had, how they put bulldozers and flattened the graves of their ancestors and their holy land, where for hundreds and thousands of years these people have been living in that United States. Copying that, this illegitimate child, because if the parent is that cruel, if the one who created that, and if we take America as a husband and Great Britain as a wife, and this is the product of these two countries who are the most hated. In Great Britain, when the British Empire ended, 99% of the problems on the left, like Kashmir, like Tibet, like Rohingya now, like you all know that Hong Kong, they left the Palestine matter unresolved, unsolved. And similarly, the others like France, Netherlands, and the other countries who colonized, it was just like a loot. Whatever you can rob, rob it. And with no gold mine in the whole country, why on earth France has the largest golden reserves in the world is because all that gold he takes from one of these colonies, which poorest African country, and then you say that you have a GDP, you are advanced, you have roads, you have, all kinds of monuments, palaces, and Eiffel Tower. Same is the case with the United States, that they robbed and dropped and dropped. And look, the last thing I'm going to show you is that the whole world is saddened with the genocide being committed, and they forget the root cause is that they look at the end result, which is October the 7th. It's nonsense, because you should see what was the root cause of October the 7th. That was when it overflowed the hatred, when you cage them in the open air prison, people for 16 years, and control their entry and only use them as slaves. What is the difference? But the Americans used the Africans who they bought, put them in ships, chained them, and used their women, converted their children into forcibly by Christians, but they reverted back to their thing, and they are no more Christians. So for a short period, they took the advantage out of those other human beings by making them slaves. It's exactly the same, and this is a small group of Jewish people, and it's a disgrace for the whole Jewish, I think, community. They should blacklist the Zionists. They should distance themselves from them And already it's happening in the university campuses, not only in the United States but all across the globe. So that's the biggest part which the Israel has lost. Lost all the friends, lost all the European friends. Now the whole Europe recognizes Israel as a traitor, as an aggressor and an occupier, as a person who is involved in apartheid, and no more democracy for the other human beings. It could be maybe only for the people who live in Israel, but nothing to do with the people whose land they have occupied by force. Now being attacked from 5 sides, what you think is going to happen? I have no sympathy for them now, because I have sympathy for those grieving mothers. I have also sympathies for those youngsters, 18 years, 20, forced to fight Hamas. How on earth can you fight? How can these an 18-year-old girl or a boy forced to, what can the idea can fund? So the result is that every hour the cave is being dug, and these idea of young Jewish soldiers are being buried there. Who is responsible? One crazy man, mentally retarded, trying to protect his own and political gain from war, and want to leave a legacy which the whole world and the International Court of Justice will know that it's the crime is there. And you want to see the other ugly face of both the American president and the Natenyahu. You see how the people who went to the International Court of Justice are lying about the Rafah, about the aid, about the food, the medicine, and all this. Why on the first place you would destroy all their health service? Why would you destroy all their homes? Why would you destroy all their roads, hospitals, universities, schools, colleges? Why would you do that if you really wanted to? Why did you occupy Rafah crossing and got the David Accord finished? So even Egypt is there speaking against you, the Turkey is speaking against you, and more European countries are joining at the internet. How are you going to escape the arrest warrants at any airport you travel? And along with you, you are taken into the depths of the sea like a sunken ship. You are a bad captain. The Chief of Army Staff, the Minister of Defense, who have been forcing you that we do not want our young people to be killed by Hamas, and let the Hamas who have been duly elected, and they are the only people they wanted. You want a strong person living side by side as your neighbor, not a poor, meek, just like you, Abbas, an 80-year-old deranged with dementia who you can control as a puppet. It's no good to you. If anybody can help and protect you, is the friendship with a strong person, the government of Hamas. Made it up with them. It's never too late. When the Japan and America are doing trade and they know each other, who won in the Second World War, when the Germans and Americans are in speaking terms, the Great Britain is speaking terms, whole of Europe is in there, why on earth can you not live in peace with both the West Bank as well as the Gaza Strip? Jordan, Egypt, Syria, these are your neighbors. So you are a loser, a loser, a loser. Now you, with your at age of 75 or 78, whatever you are, and same is with Joe Biden, you have eye on the oil and gas, and this harbor you are now building with their dead bodies in it, with all the debris from the Gaza. You should be ashamed. You can't be human. Both of you can't be human. This is why you are buddy, and you said that you know Joe Biden for the last 40 years. Doesn't matter. I'll be all right with him, and he will start sending me dumb bombs again, and I'll start killing everybody there. You will die much way before you can kill everybody. You are not God. So please look at it, what you have gained and what you have lost, and nobody is going to believe you or by Joe Biden.
I'm prepared to go on with the Australians and the New Zealanders, but I'm not prepared to go on with the Americans.
Why not, Mr. Prime Minister? Why do you think America...
Well, can I put it this way? I think there are highly intelligent, well-meaning often people, and some of their leaders, like Kennedy, the late president, had signs of growing greatness, depth. But, you know, by and large, the administration lacks depth and judgment or wisdom, which comes out of an accumulation of knowledge of human beings and human situations over a long period of time. That's lacking. And it's not their fault. What have they got? 300-400 years of history, and they've become a nation just recently. You know, I'll tell you this. I've had only three experiences with the Americans. And they did not intend any harm in each one of them. But the tragedy was they did real harm. First, this is old stuff now. We caught an American CIA agent trying to subvert our intelligence special branch officer. Bribe him so that the special branch officer will feed the CIA, because the CIA wants to know what's happening. I mean, subverting a Singapore officer. The man might have succeeded, but I'm proud to say that the officer offered large sum of money and continuing sums of money. This was in 1960. Refused and reported the matter to his chief, who reported it to me. Man was caught, locked up. And it was on razor's edge whether we charged him in open court or not. No, let me explain this. When I told the American government, all right, we keep quiet, you take this man away, $100 million to the Singapore government for economic development. You know? No, listen to me. I didn't tell, you know, I never spoke to the Americans direct because, you know, they lack the finesse, and, you know, they may say, yes, they give it to you. Why not? Why should the Singapore government just give to you, to me, which would have ruined me? But through an intermediary, they offered me and my party $10 million. I mean, the insult, you know. I told them, keep it.
खतरनाक सूरत हाल ये है कि ईरान
This is your host, Naeem bin Mohammad Rafi, and here is...
and children. Lives are shattered. Respect for international humanitarian law is in tatters. During my visit to the Rafah crossing 10 days ago, I met veteran humanitarians who told me categorically that the crisis and suffering in Gaza is unlike any they have ever seen. Meanwhile, as I saw on my way to the Rafah crossing, long lines of trucks loaded with humanitarian aid continue to face obstacle after obstacle. When the gates to aid are closed, the doors to starvation are opened. More than half the population, over 1 million people, are facing catastrophic hunger. Children in Gaza today are dying for lack of food and water. This is incomprehensible and entirely avoidable. Nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. I'm also deeply troubled by reports that the Israeli military's bombing campaign includes artificial intelligence as a tool in the identification of targets, particularly in densely populated residential areas, resulting in a high level of civilian casualties. No part of life and death decisions which impact entire families should be delegated to the cold calculation of algorithms. I've warned for many years of the dangers of weaponization artificial intelligence and reducing the essential role of human agency. AI should be used as a force for good to benefit the world, not to contribute to waging war on an industrial level, blurring accountability. In its speed, scale, and inhumane ferocity, the war in Gaza is the deadliest of conflicts for civilians, for aid workers, for journalists, for health workers, and for our own colleagues. Some 196 humanitarian aid workers, including more than 175 members of our own UN staff, have been killed. The vast majority were serving UNRWA, the backbone of all relief efforts in Gaza. Others include colleagues from the World Health Organization and World Food Programme, as well as humanitarians from Doctors Without Borders, the Red Crescent, and just a few days ago, World Central Kitchen. An information war has added to the trauma, obscuring facts and shifting blame. Denying international journalists entry into Gaza is allowing disinformation and false narratives to flourish. We honor all humanitarian workers who have been killed in this conflict and pledge to remember their commitment and sacrifice. Following this week's appalling killing of 7 humanitarian workers from World Central Kitchen, the Israeli government has acknowledged mistakes and announced some disciplinary measures. But the essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again. Fixing those failures requires independent investigations and meaningful and measurable changes on the ground. In the aftermath of this tragedy, the United Nations was also informed by the Israeli government of its intention to allow a substantial increase in humanitarian aid distributed in Gaza. I sincerely hope that these announced intentions are effectively and quickly materialized, because the situation in Gaza is absolutely desperate. Dramatic humanitarian conditions require a quantum leap in the delivery of life-saving aid, a true paradigm shift. I repeat my urgent appeals for...
Now, what did the Jews do? When you ask what have the Germans done to the Jews, you must always ask what have done the Jews to the Germans. Since 1850, when the Jews got all the political rights in Germany, in the German Reich, they have done 3 things which are really dramatic. Number 1, they were a small minority of 2% of the population. At the time when Hitler came to power, 500,000 within 60 million German people. 500,000 among 60 million. They were a small minority. This small minority managed to control about 50% of the media, to give about 70% of all judges, to have a tremendous influence in movie and in theater, and in literature. They were overrepresented. This is one thing. They were absolutely overrepresented, as today in England, in France, and in the United States. Second, Jews were at the origin of a lot of catastrophic financial bank crashes in Germany between 1870 and 1920. In that time, they made a lot of crashes which have, this is all documented. It's not Nazi propaganda or anti-Semitic or Arab propaganda. It's a lot of books have been published, even by Jewish Germans, about this problem. They have millions of German fathers have lost their incomes, their fortune, their savings, because of these Jewish gangsters, bank gangsters and speculations people. Then the third point, which was psychologically the most dangerous of all, they have introduced into German art and culture and theater and movie decadence, immorality. The first homosexual theaters, plays, were made in Berlin in the 1920s. The first adultery theater plays were made in the 1880s and 1890s, 100 years ago, by Jewish authors. Adultery, then sexual perversions of all sorts, sadism, masochism, a lot of homosexuality, all these things, and then decadent art, you know, an art which is absolutely ridiculous, so-called modern art. It was all pushed by Jewish intellectuals, and this created among the German people a big revolt. And they wrote books ridiculing Christianity, ridiculing Jesus. I mean, it was something like Salman Rushdie with the Muslims, and they were furious.
Israel is bombing Lebanon, is bombing Syria, is bombing Gaza, and you're worried about the Yemenis interfering with ships because there's money been lost over it? Is it a joke? Honest, I just don't understand how you can take this perspective. What he's going to do about it? Is he ever going to tell Israel that they're committing a genocide? Because if this is not a genocide that's going on in Gaza, then what would you call it? That's one of my questions to you. I want you to know, what would you call what's going on in Gaza if it's not a genocide? And my other question to you is, if right now the US and UK are bombing cities in Yemen, do you think that's against the UN Charter? Because I do. Please tell me. It might be okay with the international rules-based order that just make up as you go along, but it is not okay with the UN Charter. Give us a break.
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार जरूर।
जब ये ड्रोन गिरते हैं तो इसका जो मलबा होता है वो कहाँ पर जाता है? वो आप देखिए ब्लैक मार्केट से होता हुआ वो सीधा रूस चला जाता है। अब सबसे बड़ा मसला ये है कि आम रूटीन में कोई टेक्नोलॉजी तबाह होती है, वो टेक्नोलॉजी तबाह होना वो लोअर वर्जन होता है। ये टेक्नोलॉजी तबाह होने का मतलब है कि बिल्कुल फर्स्ट हैंड टेक्नोलॉजी जो है, जो यूएस की एयरफोर्स इस्तेमाल करती है, वो तबाह हुई है। आज इंडिया को भी कान हो गए हैं, बड़े अच्छे खासे हो गए हैं, इसीलिए उन्होंने सुना भी दिया कि भाई मैं तो किसी की लड़ाई में आता नहीं हूं, मैं तो बल्कि सपोर्ट भी नहीं करता। सो असल में वो इनके दरबार तक पहुंच चुके हैं, इनके घर तक, इनके दरवाजे तक पहुंच चुके हैं। सो ये सूरत हाल बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग थी, और आज का जो हमला है वो अमेरिका को मुद्दतों याद रहेगा कि पिछली दफा जब इन्हें ड्रोन गिराया था तो उन्होंने कहा था इस दफा हम एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी मॉडिफाई करके भेजेंगे।
यूनिवर्सल टेलीविजन को सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें, उसके बाद बेल बटन पे क्लिक करें और अपने कमेंट्स के सेक्शन में अपने कीमती जो ख्यालात का इजहार जरूर।